Tal Ben-Shahar, welcome to the World Happiness Fest. I'm so happy to see you here again, always bringing so much wisdom to everybody. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you for having the fest. It's a great event, and we're all very fortunate that you created it.
Yes, and I feel that we're expanding, and we know that happiness is contagious. But actually, it's so interesting because now we have more things contagious, and one of them is the coronavirus. So I was thinking that why don't we talk, and why don't you actually bring your wisdom around how can we lead in times of uncertainty? You have this amazing book about the joy of leadership. But I think that we are going through, and actually every day that goes by, it looks like there is more threat around pandemia, around what to do. And I feel that fear is becoming symptomatic about what's really going on in the world. So how do we deal with these situations, and what is the role of the leader when these things like this happen?
Good. So, first of all, let me start with a big picture of, the role of a field of happiness or talking about joy in times like this. And many people say, why don't you postpone this? Why don't you wait until, this epidemic or potentially pandemic is over, and then we'll talk about happiness. Or you look at it in organizations where people say, now we're going through difficult times financially. The markets are going down. Let's leave happiness till later when everything goes well. So what is the answer to that? You see, it's important to understand that the science of happiness, while dealing with the zero to the positive, increasing well-being, it also functions as a very important antidote to the negative. In other words, if you increase people's levels of well-being, if you start focusing on their strength, if people start practicing more mindfulness, if they form healthier relationships, if they find a sense of meaning and purpose in their work, yes, sure, these things will make them happier. Levels of well-being will go up. At the same time, they'll also be better able to deal with hardships, with difficulties, with uncertainties, with challenges. In other words, the science of happiness contributes from the zero to the positive. It also very much helps us better deal with the negative, whatever that negative may be, whether it's a virus, a downturn in the economy, personal or professional challenges.
But something that I'm feeling when you talk to people around is that because there is uncertainty and we don't have all the information, it looks like you are in danger. So the feeling of being in danger, how do you deal with that? What the science of happiness shows us? How can we deal with that?
Yeah, the first thing to understand is that, danger is dangerous. And if there is danger, we need to take as many precautions as possible. The science of happiness doesn't say, okay, well, just go out and look for people who, carry the virus and just dare danger. It's obviously not about that. It's about taking precautions and being careful and listening to the authorities and the experts on the topic. At the same time, there's also a great deal that we can do internally to be able to face the danger, whether real or perceived, in a healthier way. So what, for example, can we do? Let me begin actually with something that is perhaps the easiest or the simplest to implement, and that is physical exercise. Regular physical exercise, there's a lot of research showing that it contributes to our physical health, obviously, as well as to our mental health. What regular physical exercise does is it makes us more resilient. So, just like if, you lift weights now, your muscles get stronger. When you exercise, your neural muscles, so to speak, become stronger. They become tougher. In other words, better able to weather uncertainty or challenge of any other sort. So regular physical exercise is important. I often ask my students, when is the time that you are least likely to exercise? And almost everyone to the person says, well, during exams. And I ask why, and they say the obvious, because we don't have time, or we're too stressed, or whatever it is. And I say to them, these are the most important times to exercise. This is when your body and mind needs exercise the most. Similarly here, not just for physical health, also for mental health, to continue exercising. Something else is being present, being mindful. The power of mindfulness is that when you're being present, you're accepting, you're embracing the present moment, whatever comes. You're not saying to yourself, don't be afraid, or don't be so scared or worry. It's not about that. It's about accept the worry and being scared and being fearful, accepting who you are, where you are. And when you accept it, paradoxically, it's much more likely to take control over you. Because it's when I say to myself, I shouldn't be afraid of corona or anything else. I should be tougher. It's then that actually the fear only strengthens. Now, through meditation, being mindful is about accepting. It's about embracing. And we're much better able to deal with hardships and difficulties, whatever they are, when we practice mindfulness. So physical exercise, mindfulness, most importantly, spend time with people we care about and who care about us. Relationships are the best antidotes to for dealing with hardship. And by the way, all these antidotes that I talked about are for both body and mind. So physical exercise, of course, mindfulness, of course, so are relationships. When we spend time with people who care about us, people who we care about, our immune system actually strengthens. Our physical health strengthens. So not only do we do better psychologically, we also do better physiologically.
So relationships, mindfulness, and that acceptance and physical exercise are really good antidotes. What about resilience? Resilience is one of those capabilities that really can be trained at some point. Is that an antidote? How do you train resilience?
Yeah, so in fact, the sum total of the things that I spoke about and various other things, such as keeping a journal, writing about what I'm going through, or talking about what I'm going through, that also contributes. That's also an antidote. All these antidotes together, the sum total is resilience. I mean, think about it. What is resilience? Resilience, in the words of psychologist Nathaniel Branden, is about the psychological immune system. It's about a psychological immune system. What does an immune system mean? And, if I have a strong immune system, it doesn't mean that I don't get sick. I still get sick, but a strong immune system means I get sick less often. And when I do get sick, I recover more promptly with a strong immune system. Similarly, psychological immune system means, I do feel sad or anger or a sense of uncertainty or fear. These are all natural emotions, but a strong psychological immune system means I feel it less often, and when I do, I recover more promptly. So having a strong psychological immune system is great. However, it doesn't exempt us from experiencing the difficulties associated with uncertainty. And the first step is we need to accept that, rather than reject the fact that, I could feel fearful, whether it's for my kids or for myself or for the world. That is natural. That is part of being human, accepting it, embracing it, and then doing whatever it takes to strengthen our immune system so that we bounce back, recover. That's what resilience is about.
So what is your recommendation in this situation of perceived threat and danger to leaders? What should be leaders be thinking and acting and behaving in this moment?
Yeah, good. So, I'm going to give somewhat contradictory advice, and it's important for leaders to try to reconcile the two. And here is the contradictory advice. First of all, be authentic, be real. That's what employees need. That's what people need from their political leaders. Be authentic, be real. At the same time, don't lose it. Meaning, you go into hysteria as a leader, that's contagious. That's very contagious, and that's scary, and that increases levels of fear. Now, what if a leader does feel a sense of hysteria? What if a leader does feel real deep fear? Well, then they should deal with it in close quarters, meaning they should deal with it by themselves with their trusted employees, or with their trusted family, or with their colleagues, or whomever it is. Deal with this so that they can also project confident and calm. Now, as I said, this may be contradictory, because on the one hand, the first thing I said is authenticity. This is the first rule of great leadership, the antecedent of great leadership. At the same time, I'm also saying, if you're about to lose it, well, think twice about losing it, i.e., think twice about being authentic. Now, this goes to a much broader issue that has to do with, of course, leadership, also has to do with service providers in general. I mean, what are leaders? Leaders provide a service. Now, what about a service provider? And let's take something which is not related to a threat necessarily. So you have a salesperson in a store. The salesperson is giving service to the clients, to the buyers. And someone comes in, and you know that you connect to people best when you're authentic. And the client comes in and says, "Hi, how are you?" to the salesperson. Now, the salesperson had just had a hell of a morning. Had a fight with his partner, and feeling awful. It's not the time to tell the client, "Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. Why don't you sit down and let's take an hour or two, and I'll tell you all about it." No, the time is you say, "I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing? How can I help you?" With a smile. Now, that's not being authentic. Here is the key, though, and this is important for all service providers. It's important for service providers who sell in a store, lead a Fortune 500 company. The important thing is that you need to have places in your life where you are being authentic and being real. So the salesperson can put on a facade when the customer comes in. However, that salesperson needs someone at home or at work where they can vent, where they can be authentic and real and talk about what's bothering them. Same with leaders. It's okay to put on a strong facade once in a while, ideally not often, but once in a while it's necessary, while at the same time having what Brian Little, professor at Cambridge, calls restorative niches. A restorative niche is a place where you literally restore, where you're able to be yourself, authentic, real, and it gives you strength to continue and go on. Because if you don't have those restorative niches, then you're really in trouble.
I feel that for leaders, in this case, to really know how human behavior expands, it is a must, right? Because we've seen all these groups in demonstrations. We can even talk about the social brain, that we know that at some point, if there is a danger and fear that becomes real for somebody, people really act quickly, because this is linked to probably the reptilian brain and all this chemistry of the brain. So if leaders are not aware that this is really going on, and they overreact, they can really create a ripple effect that can have impressive impact. So how do we get this message to these leaders? How do we actually help all these leaders to get control of what's really going on and be more conscious about who they are?
Mm. You know, what leaders do, what they feel, what they think, and again, going back, especially what they do, has an effect on the entire organization. You know, we all have been endowed with mirror neurons. Mirror neurons mean that we imitate other people, that we imitate, we take on moods, and we take on behavior, especially of the leaders. Now, a leader can be leader in an organization, a leader can be the teacher in a classroom, a leader can be a parent. But our mirror neurons are especially alert, especially on when a leader is around, which means that leaders really need to cultivate a healthy mindset, a healthy heart set. They need to model healthy behaviors if they want the people working with them, those who are mirroring them to a great extent, if they want them to be at their best, which means that before a leader says, you know, I want my organization to experience calm, and in order to do that, I want everyone to meditate. Before that, a leader needs to do that herself or himself, because it's ultimately their calm or lack thereof that becomes contagious. So, you know, going back to Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. That is the first rule of leadership.
So in this case, how do you feel we are being led around the world? You travel everywhere. You meet with so many people and so many leaders. What is the state of leadership in the world today?
I must say, right now, I'm not that impressed with the state of leadership. You know, having said that, being a leader is not easy, and you know, what is easy is to judge. You know, to sit here in the comfort of my home and to judge all those leaders who are out there. With that caveat in place, I do think that leaders today too much draw on fear. There is obviously, and you see this around the world, whether it's in the US, in Europe, in Asia, Africa, you see it around the world. There is so much conflict and dissent and bad blood flowing between political parties and groups, and that is very, very unfortunate. You know, it would be great if more leaders were well versed in the science of well-being and thought about how can I increase the people's well-being, and first and foremost, how can I increase well-being for myself? Because again, change starts with the self. Be the change you want to see in the world. There are not enough leaders who even think about these concepts, let alone are well versed in the science of happiness. I think that should be a required course for all leaders: organizational, political, educational.
I couldn't agree more. Tal, do you agree that it is easier to live in sorrow than to live in joy? We heard, how does it relate to the science of happiness? Is that a truism or not?
Yeah, to live in sorrow, we don't have to do anything. We just maybe we need to read the newspaper on a regular basis, and but other than that, I think basically we don't need to do much to be happy or to become happier. That takes work. It's the equivalent of to be a bad tennis player. You don't have to do anything. In fact, I'd
Good
recommend
for
you do
me.
nothing if your goal is to be a good tennis player. The same but if you want to be a good tennis player, you have to practice. If you want to be a great tennis player, you have to practice a lot. Similarly for happiness and unhappiness. If you want to be unhappy, just do nothing. If you want to be happy, you need to do something. If you want to be very happy or much happier than you are today, then now get to work.
Why is that? Is this human nature? This is DNA? What is the biology of biology as a science is showing us?
Yeah, I think it's human nature in that we weren't born to be sedentary. We weren't born to just lounge around and do nothing. We were born to work. This is part of our nature, whether it's because of evolution or whether it's because of God creating us this way or banishing us from the Garden of Eden. Again, you take your pick, what the source is. The bottom line is that we need to work to experience a sense of meaning, purpose, satisfaction, well-being. We need to work physically, we need to work psychologically, we need to engage our full being, or what my colleagues and I have come to call whole being.
What do you think we have learned over the last couple of years? What's new around the science of happiness and well-being? Are there any new research, any new conclusions that you didn't know before?
I don't think there is that much new. I think what the science of happiness is mostly focusing on now is cracking the code to lasting change. And in that, there is new that is old. What do I mean by new that is old? When it comes to bringing about lasting change, it turns out that philosophy had it wrong and theology had it right. So if we think about philosophy, let's take the representative of at least Western philosophy, and that is Socrates, who's considered the father of the Western canon, the Western tradition. Socrates said that to know the good is to do the good. To know the good is to do the good. In other words, if I know what's good for me, what's right, what's just, what's moral, what contributes to my happiness, you substitute good with whatever positive word you want. If I know what is good for me, then I'll act accordingly. Unfortunately, in this case, Socrates was wrong. Not a little wrong, but very wrong. Because if you think about it, most of us know the good. We know that we should be grateful rather than take the good things in our lives for granted. I mean, there are very few people who will tell you, no, it's good for you to take things for granted. Of course, it's good to appreciate. And yet most people do not appreciate, and most people do take for granted most positive things in their lives. Or, most people know that they should eat certain foods and not eat others, or that they should exercise a number of times a week. And then most people don't comply with what they know. Or we know that we should always be attentive and always keep our calm And even when we do get angry, it should be controlled anger rather than losing it. And yet, I don't know of a single person who keeps it together all the time. So, the point is here that to know the good is not to do the good. And this is where philosophers had it wrong, religion had it right. Because religion, as far back as we know, understood that what you need in order to bring about lasting change is not just knowledge. Yes, knowledge is a prerequisite, of course. But beyond knowledge, you need what I've come to call the 3 R's of change. And the 3 R's of change are reminders, repetition, and rituals. Reminders, repetition, and rituals. So in terms of reminders, why does religion require that we pray every day or go to, church, synagogue, mosque on a regular basis? Even if we know the prayers off by heart. Why? Because we constantly want to be reminded of the kind of person I want to be, whether it's humble or grateful or moral and just. So there are constant reminders. Or think about why are there holidays that repeat themselves, or saint days that repeat themselves year after year after year, ongoing, constant reminders. And then there is repetition. Repetition could be in the context of religion, saying the prayer over and over again, or spending time volunteering or giving alms and being generous on an ongoing, regular basis. Not just do it once and then you're all set, you go to heaven. You have to do it over and over again. Repetition is key. Why? Because it's through repetition that comes from reminders that we create rituals. And what are rituals? Rituals are quite literally neural pathways in our brains that lead an action, an activity, to be a habit, automatic. And we can find it again with the tennis stroke that you hit over and over and over again. Serena Williams doesn't need to think about how she's going to hit her forehand. She has neural pathways in her brain associated with a ball coming at her at 100 miles an hour and responding to it. It's automatic. Same brushing our teeth. Because we've done it so many times, it's automatic. We don't need to think about, well, should I brush my, should I not? Or maybe I'll forget. We do it. In the same way, the goal of bringing about lasting change is creating rituals, whether it's the ritual of expressing gratitude on a regular basis. And again, the foundation of that is having reminders, repetition, and then it becomes second nature. Or it could be the ritual of being a nice person and kind and generous all of the time, or at the very least, most of the time. And that also comes from being reminded of it, whether it's initially by our parents, later by a religious text, or after that by us writing down reminders in our notebook, in our daily calendar. Being kind, repeating it over and over again until it becomes second nature to us. That's how change comes about. And this is where I think that the most important work being done today in psychology resides. Because knowing is no big deal. We have a lot of science. We'll have much more science. People know and will know even more. But knowing is not enough. We need the 3 R's to embed this knowledge.
I really like them, and I think they are really, really important in order to sustain what you say, change. At the same time, when I listen in, the word acceptance and attachment come to mind. And we know that acceptance, you said that from the beginning, is very important in order to get to a state of happiness. And attachment is one of those words that, especially when we think about Buddhist philosophy, becomes a big driver for happiness. However, if I feel that attachment and acceptance don't fully link to rituals, for example, because when you have rituals, actually you are attached to doing something. Correct. In a repetitive way, right? What is your sense? I mean, am I combining wrongly those five
No,
elements?
no. So this is an important distinction to make. So first of all, when it comes to acceptance, acceptance is also a ritual or a neural pathway. In that I can automatically, when I experience a painful emotion, automatically just reject it and say, I'm supposed to be a happiness expert. I shouldn't be feeling fear, anger, sadness, or whatever it is. Or I can experience the emotion and my automatic habitual response, because I've worked on reminding myself and repeating the act of accepting, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through journaling, then my automatic reaction will be acceptance. Oh, here, I'm experiencing fear, or I'm experiencing sadness or anger. It must mean I'm human, because it's a natural human emotion. So acceptance in and of itself can also be an embedded ritual of sort, or a habit, second nature. Now, when it comes to attachment, if you mean attachment being attached to a particular behavior, then some attachments are good and some attachments are bad. Attachment to ongoing accolades and prizes, that's not a good attachment. It's unlikely to yield happiness. But attachment to brushing your teeth every night before you go to sleep, I think that's a good thing. Or attachment to acts of kindness and generosity, I think that's a good thing. The attachment that's unhelpful, and again, it's different for everyone, could be an attachment to material things. It could be attachment to certain outcomes. And if the attachment hurts us, then yes, then I would recommend striving for, if possible, non-attachment. But just saying attachment is bad, attachment to anything is bad, I don't think so. And by the way, I also don't think it's possible to live without any attachment. That would mean, living without a brain and a heart. Person without a brain and a heart has no attachment, feels no attachment, thinks about nothing that may lead to attachment.
Well, Tal Ben-Shahar, is always amazing learning from you. Do you have a final recommendation for people who are struggling, especially those who are struggling with this uncertainty? We know from the World Health Organization and from many institutions, and actually this is coming from top leading organizations. That's probably why people are becoming more afraid, right? What is your recommendation? Because it looks like this is going to take a few months to be solved. What should people be thinking and doing and being in these times?
Yeah, so the first thing is really to accept the fact that these are difficult times. I'm feeling it as well. Before, I was traveling to give lectures almost whenever I wanted to. And right now, more and more lectures are being canceled or hopefully just postponed. And these are, trying times for me professionally. So, I can talk from personal experience and, drawing on the science of happiness. The first step is just accepting that it's difficult, accepting that, this is not fun. Second, after accepting, and it has to be after accepting, is trying to look for the upside of this period. For me, the upside is I'm at home a lot more. I spend much more time with my family, which is great. I'm also writing a lot more than I did before because I am home. So, for me personally, I'm trying to look at the upside, and there's usually, not always, but usually an upside, even in a difficult overall experience. And then continue, as I mentioned earlier, to exercise and to meditate. Maybe even if you don't meditate, pick up a meditation practice. Listen to music mindfully. And most importantly, spend time with loved ones. There's no substitute for that. And spend time with the loved ones face to face, and rejoice in the number one generator what I've come to call the ultimate currency, the currency of happiness.
Thank you again, Tal. It's really good having you always. You are love, and hopefully next time we can meet in person
I hope
and
so too.
celebrate with the common currency that we share.
Thank you, Luis.
Thank you.